The Nonprofit Spotlight is a production of the Volunteer Advisory Committee here at Community Television. And every month we produce a show that highlights and focuses on one of the nonprofits in Santa Cruz County doing wonderful, wonderful work. And we have a great program for you this edition because we are talking to Suzanne Willis, who is the Development and Marketing Officer for Second Harvest Food Bank, one of the terrific, great nonprofits in our Santa Cruz County and beyond. Suzanne, how are you?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great pleasure. You're going to be able to give us all the information, I'm sure, about how Second Harvest is doing and how they're actually kind of weathering the conditions of sheltering in place and social distancing and that. But first, let our audience and our viewers know just a little bit about yourself and how you became involved with Second Harvest Food Bank.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area and moved to Santa Cruz probably around 2006 or so because my partner lived here. He's a surfer, so he was not going to move to Silicon Valley. And I had been working at the university for a number of years and really felt like I wanted to do a bit more in my community, direct work in my community. I was doing fundraising for the Humanities Division, which is amazing, and I love all of the work they're doing. And I just thought I can have a bigger impact in my community, and what bigger impact is there than ensuring people have healthy, nutritious food?
Right. And development marketing, now, does that include sourcing grants and things like that as well? Is that part of your job description?
Exactly. So I actually have a team of 6. There's a team of 6 of us total. So I do have a grant writer. I also have a staff that works with our local business community. I have somebody that helps us out with our individuals. And then we have a person who's dedicated to our events and food drives as well.
That's wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit about, for people who aren't familiar, and I can't believe there would be anybody in Santa Cruz County, and beyond, Monterey, everywhere, that doesn't know about Second Harvest Food Bank. But give people just a little bit of history about Second Harvest.
Yeah, so Second Harvest is actually the first food bank in California. We were founded in 1972. We're the second food bank in the nation. So we've been around for a little while. The interesting thing that I think many people don't know is the food banking food banking itself started off as an offshoot of a Black Panthers program. So the Black Panthers, the Black Panthers had a program called Breakfast for Kids, where if you were a school kid and you were walking to school, going to school, you might stop off at a person's house and then eat breakfast. They would feed you. We've always known that children can't focus when they're hungry, right? This is not anything new to anybody. If you've ever had a little kid around you and they're hungry, you know they're not paying attention. So Breakfast for Kids started in the late 60s. It was a Black Panthers program. And then in the early 70s, this sort of moved into these kids are being dropped off, but there's excess food here in our community. Let's make sure the parents go home with that food. And that really, the first thing was some off-color cauliflower that had been frozen. Remember here in Watsonville, there used to be a lot of frozen vegetable plants here. So that's sort of moved on a little bit, but the cauliflower, perfectly fine. It was just a little bit off color, so it wasn't going to do well in market. And I think this is when we first start seeing the growth of the grade B produce movement as well. So the produce that's just fine, but it's too ugly for retail.
Oh my God!
So we are
edible and nutritious for everybody else.
Right? Yeah, it's just, I remember the first week I started here, I was in the warehouse looking at things, and there were some celeries. And I swear the celeries probably were 2.5 feet tall. I mean, they were these sort of monster, ginormous celeries. And so if you went into Safeway or Whole Foods or any of our local grocery stores and you saw 2-foot tall celery, you'd be like, what the heck is that? I'm not buying that. I'm going to get my 1-foot tall celery. So that's sort of the grade B produce, the ugly produce that doesn't have a home. Well, the food banks around our nation give that grade B produce a home, and it's really amazing. So we moved on from sort of the breakfast for kids and sending food home with them to a full-on food distribution site. And in 1986, we moved down here into Watsonville to our facilities where we're at. And then sort of in that time, we've supported now, I will say, 4 disasters. If you think about the COVID pandemic as one of the disasters we've helped with. There were a couple of floods in our community as well as the Loma Prieta earthquake, right? So the food bank really came into play in those natural disasters. And then in 2008-9 was the recession that we had, the big recession that we had here in our country. And California was particularly hard hit, the tech industry and all that. And that actually led to the numbers that we were seeing pre-COVID. So we were serving about 55,000 people a month. So we're looking at 20% of our county's population a month in services. And we do those services in 3 ways, actually. We partner with about 100 nonprofits here in the community. So these are leading nonprofits like the Gray Bears, Salvation Army, Jacob's Heart. All of those organizations, about 100 of them actually source, we provide the majority of the food that they source for their client population. So like Jacob's Heart works with families that have children that are dealing with cancer, right? So they don't have to worry about sourcing food. They can come to us. We've got the food for them. They can support the families that they need. They do a whole lot more than just that, but we take this one thing off of their plate. We also have about 80 of our own what I like to call nutrition distribution hubs. So we support direct distribution of food to about 80 different sites throughout the community. And so we're in Ben Lomond all the way down to the Pajaro Valley. So we're spread around the community. And with that, we're doing some nutrition education as well as distributing healthy food. So if I hand you a big bag of produce, there's some things in there that you might not know what to do with, right? There's the fun example I have is a kohlrabi. The first time I saw a kohlrabi, I'm like, what is this? And it was a big kohlrabi. It was a great big one. And I just thought, right? Or tiny. It might be a tiny kohlrabi as well. This one was a particularly big one. And I think, well, I don't know how to cook with this. I don't know what to do with this. And if I didn't have some kind of guide on that, I might just throw it away. I might gnaw on it a little bit and be like, and throw that away. Well, if you've never cooked with an eggplant or you've never cooked with a pumpkin, and these are some of the things that we distribute out, then you might just throw that food away. So we have cooking tips, we have recipe cards, we offer classes on how do you read labels, how do you spot hidden sugars in foods, how do you cook more healthy, how do you cook on a strict budget. So these are the kind of classes that we would offer, or tip cards that we would offer when people would come to our nutrition distribution sites. We're also a county resource for CalFresh. Now, Steve, are you familiar with CalFresh?
Of course I am, but I'm sure our viewers would love to hear about it.
Excellent. So CalFresh was also formerly known as food stamps. So in its previous life, it was food stamps. It's part of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that's SNAP. So if you ever hear anybody talking about the government program SNAP, California has just taken that and rebranded it, just like we've rebranded Covered California and Medi-Cal. Sure. So these, it's the California version of these federal programs. So we have CalFresh outreach workers who are amazing, I'll say, at getting people through the system. This is a government process, and we know with government forms and processes, they're not necessarily straightforward and easy. So
there can be some obstacles to be able to access those services and support. Yeah,
absolutely. So we have a team of people that can help anybody work through that process, which is fantastic. So kind of getting back to where we're at, like I said, typically we support about 20% of the county's population, and that's through our partner agencies, and that's through our food distribution. And then what we want to do is make sure everybody has CalFresh that qualifies for it, because CalFresh really is the first line of defense against hunger. It puts money in your pocket that you can go shopping at grocery stores and farmers markets, so that you can have access to the food that the food bank might not be able to distribute.
Right. And so, I, like most people in Santa Cruz County, are used to seeing the Second Harvest Food Bank trucks out, the
Mm-hmm.
people, the volunteers. I just did want to mention that it's a wonderful and maybe not as well known aspect of your programs is that nutritional awareness and really making people, giving people the information they need about what it is they're eating and how good it is for them. And I've had, speaking about your volunteers, your food trucks, I've been fortunate enough to be down to your Watsonville facility many times, sourcing food myself and talking to Willie and doing that thing. But how is this sheltering in place and social distancing, how is that affecting your mission of providing food for people and keeping your volunteers safe and your people safe, but still being able to furnish the meal that people are so much counting on?
Right. The shelter in place order. So March 13th, I think, was the day that shelter in place happened. And then on March 21st, we had, I think it was the 21st, we had 1,700 calls to our community food hotline saying,
Wow.
I need assistance. I need food assistance. That's staggering. A busy day for our food hotline is 100 people, 100 calls calling, right?
Wow, that
Yeah.
much
So,
oh, that's amazing.
so,
Not surprising, but amazing, yeah.
It's amazing, it's staggering, and so we knew that there was tremendous need in the community. Obviously, we also saw, we saw this panic buying in our local grocery stores, right?
Of
Everybody
course, yeah.
going in and buying
Mhm.
everything. One person was telling me she was in shopping and she saw a woman walking through the grocery store and just scooped her arm down the peanut butter aisle and bought it all,
Yeah.
right? So we were dealing with food shortages in our grocery stores, and then people suddenly being furloughed, laid off, businesses closing. What does that mean? And the anxiety that comes along with that. And that really reflected in our the need in our community. So we saw tremendous need grow. We immediately reacted by increasing food to our partner agencies. Very few of our partner agencies closed. The majority of them actually are still open and running.
Oh,
we
that's
lost
great. Yeah.
a few of them closed, because they didn't have the support system in place. They were run entirely by vulnerable populations. So, but I would say 90% of our nonprofit partners are still open and doing what they need to do. So we increased food to them so that they could increase out to not only their population, but the growth in the population that they had. We also increased food to our sites, but that wasn't enough. So we actually started a community-wide or a community large-scale drive-through. So people could drive through a food distribution. In the first few, we were serving about 3,000 families. We've dropped that number significantly because I think the stimulus checks that are going out and unemployment checks that are going out, but we're still serving twice as many people in say May and into June than we would have a year ago.
Right.
So instead of the 20% of our population, we're serving about 40% of our community's population. And we're doing that by increasing food out to our partner agencies, out to our own sites, as well as this community drive-through. So if you didn't already have a nutrition home, right, you weren't already getting food from Gray Bears or something, or you weren't already at one of our nutrition distribution sites, then you can come to our community drive-through. And those happen every Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we swap between the fairgrounds and the boardwalk so that people can, get to a drive-through that's closer to them. And typically, you're getting about 50 pounds of food at each of these drive-throughs.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So enough for a family.
Yeah, and of course, Suzanne, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. Second Harvest Food Bank has to pay their bills, has to generate the funding to be able to provide this wonderful essential. So we're talking about essential services.
Right.
No service could be more essential than the necessity of being able to get good, nutritious food. But let people know where they can go to your website, they can make a donation, a contribution. I'm sure that you are fundraising as hard as you can during this particular time to really make sure these services continue to be provided.
We absolutely are. just like I was saying, our output has doubled, you know, the number of pounds that we're distributing, the number of people we're serving. Our expenses, fortunately, haven't doubled, but they're significantly higher. We're out there sourcing food on the open market, just like grocery stores are now. We're in competition with people to get food. And that's just, that's temporary. That's not going to last for very much longer. I think we're seeing food supplies at grocery stores normalize, you know, things like that. So I don't believe that we're going to have a big problem with that continuing, but everything is more expensive. We've moved from farmers market style distributions to, let's say, a CSA box. It's a grab and go. Now when you show up to a distribution site, you're handed a bag of produce or you're handed a bag of pantry items and you move along. You're not shopping, you're not selecting what you want. And so our labor has increased significantly. And with that, you mentioned, Steve, the volunteer opportunities, and like you used to come down and volunteer with us.
Actually,
and we really
love those people. It's the one thing that I miss as much as anything is my weekly visit down to your Watsonville facility to say hello to those good folks.
Right. And I will say I miss it too. We have been so fortunate, though, to have the National Guard come in and support us with this. We felt once shelter in place happened, a number of our volunteers actually are retired individuals. They're seniors or they're high schoolers that are working towards their community service hours and things. And we just thought, this is such a vulnerable population. We really cannot expose them in a revolving crowd of people coming in and out of the warehouse. Plus, we needed to make sure that our warehouse was as safe as possible, that our warehouse staff weren't being exposed to viruses, and that we weren't passing that along in the food. Now, the CDC has basically said the virus transmission via food is minimal. The risks of that are minimal. But, you know, we just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to serve our community and keep them safe. So the National Guard came in, and they've been a tremendous help. We've had Guard members here since early April.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they've been packing and sorting thousands and thousands of bags of food every week. We're distributing probably around 10,000 bags of food, and this is produce, pantry items, and frozen goods that we have. So they're the ones that are doing all that heavy lifting and hard labor for us, and we you know, thank them dearly for the work that they're doing. But we know that that's not a long-term solution. The Guard are here through June, maybe into July, but after that, we're going to make a call out again to have our beloved volunteers come back. And I know many of our volunteers are chomping at the bit to come back as well. They're like, I want to be back. I want to help. I want to do my part. So we're looking at a really good strategy to be able to bring our volunteers back, make sure we have social distancing, make sure we have all the protective equipment in place that we need to, and how can we continue to serve twice as many people in our community as we have before. But back to your kind of original question, what does that mean? You know, fundraising, that's absolutely
sure. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, as everybody knows, you know.
Exactly. So we're paying more for equipment, we're paying more for packaging, we're paying more for labor, we're paying more for everything. And so the fundraising is a really important aspect of that. And people can, if they'd like to, give online at thefoodbank.org. We have a donate button just right there. You can click on that.
Wonderful.
One of the things that people question, this is a secure platform that people can go through and use their credit card, but we also ask people if they would like to cover the credit card fee and the platform fee, because of course nothing comes for free, right? So people can, if they would like to cover those fees, they can keep that button checked. If they don't want to, uncheck it. We cover those fees. It's just part of doing business. Every business in the community knows about the credit card fees. So I know it just catches some people off guard. If you want to avoid the fees entirely, we accept cash and checks as well. So, you know, we're able to accept sort of all forms of payment, though we haven't moved into Bitcoin, I can tell you.
It's great information about the National Guard, particularly the folks who view this program as it's broadcast several times, in fact, on community television on a regular playlist. Because I think people see the headline on National Guard distributing food. They don't get the real picture of what's going on. They're alarmed by that. It seems like very dramatic to them. But yet your explanation of it is perfectly reasonable. These people have come in. They're doing the work that your volunteers cannot do, at least now, safely.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing that I learned when the National Guard first got here, you know how members of the Army are called soldiers, right?
Exactly.
Members of the National Guard are called PAX, P-A-X, which means peace, right?
Yeah.
It's Latin for peace.
Yeah.
So these truly are peacekeepers, and their mission really is to ensure that California, the California National Guard, their mission is to ensure that California is, safe and a place to maintain. And having them come in and pack and distribute our food, like I said, has been a godsend, because they are, they're under very strict medical coverage and care. They're all getting, before we were even being screened, they were all being screened for fevers and health and all that kind of stuff. We've moved into that at our facilities as well. Anybody walking into our building, if you're coming in, you have to have a temperature check. You go through a series of questions. We all wear our face coverings. Oops, I just dropped mine. But right?
Here, you can see
nice. Here's mine today. I've been
oh, there you go.
I have a nice selection of face coverings so that they can match the outfits that I wear now. We had some fantastic community volunteers that made these for us, actually. They made hundreds and hundreds of face coverings so that every staff member at the food bank could have 5, so that we can wear them, we can wear them while we're here in the office, take them home and wash them, and not have to be doing laundry every night.
Yeah.
On that.
Well, I think that's a very interesting aspect of your work and your work with the National Guard, is people get to see them as community members. It's an interesting product of that involvement in the community that really, I think, broadens people's perspective about that.
And they're true community members. We've had PACs from Marina, from San Luis Obispo area. We have a current group that is here from LA. The group that had been here previously got redeployed, actually, just literally yesterday, to go and keep peace up in Sacramento. Right. So these guys and gals all have very, very serious roles within the community, and they take on a whole lot.
Yes, they do. So you and your staff and your volunteers are kind of strategizing for the present, but also for the future as we move through the summer, and there may be some relaxation of the sheltering in place order. What do you see your organization evolving and moving with that?
So Santa Cruz is such a small business community, and this pandemic and the shelter in place and the shutdowns around that has really affected our community very deeply and very seriously. We believe that the need in our community is going to grow, is going to maintain. The lesson that we learned after the 2008-9 recession is that our numbers never went back down. Right? So they spiked because of the recession, and they never went back down. We do believe our numbers are going to go down, that we're not going to be serving 40% of our community long term, but we feel that we're going to be doing that through the end of this year and well into next, that we're going to be serving that many people kind of on a regular basis. So what we're really trying to do is plan for what are our fundraising needs, what are our staffing needs, what are the food resources needs we have out there, and then obviously the volunteers. Volunteers typically make up 50% of our workforce. That's a lot, right?
Now, are people able to go onto the website or contact the organization to volunteer perspective as you move through? Are you taking names of people who say, "Hey, geez, I'd like to help with this great effort" at some point down the line?
Yes, we absolutely are. If you reach out to our volunteer manager, her name is JL. It's spelled JAEL, and her email address is jl@nagalg.org. thefoodbank.org. People can email her saying, I'm interested in volunteering. Right now, we are using some volunteers at our community drive-thrus. So every Friday, we have a few volunteer opportunities.
Right.
And then as we move forward and start having our PACs leave us, our National Guard leave us, we're going to have to bring in those community members to really help us make those produce bags and distribute them out again.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that the need certainly will be less than it perhaps is now at the height of the pandemic, but still higher than it had been. So you have to kind of maintain this increased capacity.
Yes, exactly. So we're looking at typically annually over the past several years, we distributed about 8 million pounds of food annually. And that's, again, like I said, to the 55,000 people. We're looking at probably over the next year to 2 years, 12 million pounds of food.
My goodness. Wow. That's, if anybody is calculating that, that's about 50% an increase over your, that's just incredible.
It's incredible, yeah.
And that's the work that people have come to expect from Second Harvest Food Bank. It's your organization and the work they do and the kind of work they do has really become iconic. You know, I think not only here locally, but regionally and nationally, I think people look at Second Harvest Food Bank and say that's a model that we really would like to duplicate if we could.
And, you know, our model has been duplicated specifically around our nutrition distribution programs and education programs. We're award-winning. Other food banks have adopted our style of ensuring that the community is not just getting calories, but they're getting nutrition.
No, and as I say, that's a wonderful aspect of what you do when we would go out to the Watsonville facility, of course, and they would always have some brochures and some opportunities to come to a lunch. You know, and learn something more about, you know, nutrition and dietary needs and things like that. So it's great work that you do to expand people's awareness and consciousness about really a very important element of their life. Essential, again, I say that if there is a more essential service now that's being provided in Santa Cruz County, I can't think of it. So we appreciate that. We have about a minute left. Anything you'd like to kind of wrap up to say? Please mention again the website and the opportunity for people to donate and perhaps volunteer so people know how to get involved with this great work.
Right. So visit our website, thefoodbank.org. You can also call our community food hotline. If you need food, call 662-0991. That's, of course, the 831 area code, 662-0991. We can get you hooked up with food resources. We can get you signed up for CalFresh. We can also, you know, sign you up on our volunteer wait list as well. So you can do all of that through our website, thefoodbank.org, or call our community food hotline.
Suzanne Willis, Development and Marketing Officer for Second Harvest Food Bank, thanks so much for being here. You've been a delight. Thanks for all the great work, and thank all your staff and volunteers there. The community appreciates what you do so much, and our very best, of course, to Willie McCrae, a wonderful guy. And talking about somebody, I tell the story about when we're out doing pride parades or something like that. Willie's out there with the barrels himself, you know, collecting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Dedication you'll have. Suzanne, wonderful talking to you, and thank you again for the great work, and keep it up, and we'll be talking to you again down the road. This has been Steve Plates with another edition of Nonprofit Spotlight. Tune in again next time when we focus on another wonderful nonprofit in Santa Cruz County doing great work like our good friends at Second Harvest Food Bank. I'll see you later.